Welcome to New Tracks Workshop. My name is Jim Kello. I'm the creator and host for New Tracks, where mentors help modelers build. Thanks so much for coming. I hope you come back often and tell your friends about our show. These Saturday workshops are a new project for New Tracks. They've resulted from comments I've received from modelers about scratch building and Chris Blackmar's interest in producing and leading this effort. The segments are structured like the popular build-along segments on our Wednesday evening shows, except these Saturday shows are designed to show modelers how to scratch build a model. I personally believe that scratch building is one of the most creative parts of model railroading, and I think you'll agree if you try it. Here is your opportunity to work with some skilled modelers to learn how to do it. You will learn the steps, the skills, the techniques involved in scratch building a model in any scale you want. There are no kits to buy, only the needed scratch building supplies. The plans that will be used for the model, you can download on your computer at no cost. The show's moderator, Chris Blackmar, is a very talented and artistic modeler, and he and his guest will guide you through the complete scratch building process, one small step at a time. After all, that's what mentoring is all about. If you're a beginner, I hope you'll join in and experience the thrill of completing a scratch-built model and being able to stand back and say, I built that. If you're a more experienced or advanced modeler, I hope you'll join in and offer your advice and knowledge to less skilled modelers, and even get some fresh ideas yourself. The live shows will, of course, be recorded on our YouTube channel, so you can refer to the information later if you need to. In addition, I hope you'll visit our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and subscribe. You'll need to confirm the email that you received to verify your address. And after that, you'll receive all of the notice of our future shows, as well as the login links to attend. If you would prefer to watch the series on YouTube, you can do that by going to our channel, New Tracks Modeling, ring the bell, and click all. Therefore, you'll get all of the notice for the start of all of our future shows on the channel. If you can spare a little time, I hope you'll consider joining our management team to help us plan and produce any of our future shows. Please contact me at Jim Kello at newtracksmodeling.com, and let's discuss your interest. So welcome to the New Tracks Workshop. I look forward to seeing your finished models and, of course, hearing any suggestions for future shows you may have. Now, here is Chris Blackmar to start your scratch building journey.
Okay, and welcome everybody. Let's get this show on the road. Hang on one second here and let me kind of get myself up. And Will, I'm just seeing you, but I first of all wanted to welcome everybody to the show and wanted to kick this thing off a little bit here by kind of apologizing for the last show. I went down a couple of rabbit holes that I forgot to take you guys on. So one of them was we were talking about ice, and something that we totally forgot to discuss, quite frankly, was ice chips. And Al Collins, if you guys watched the Wednesday show on New Tracks, was showing a few items that he kind of has worked or been working on or is working on. And let's see here. Let me try to bring up, oops, that's not what I want. And I'm sorry. Let me get rid of this one and see what happened here. Let me Photos and and let's go to come on, puppy. I'm hoping that people are seeing some ice buckets there.
Not yet.
Not yet. You're still seeing my thing here. Okay. Well, let's try this again one more time. And
You're not sharing content at the moment.
That's what I
yeah,
thought.
yeah, I've got it right here, and I had it on the advanced tab, and I have to go back to that basic
There we
tab.
go.
There we go. And if I make it full screen here for you folks, anyway, the thing that Al had brought up that we had neglected to talk about was ice chips. And of course, on our docks and stuff, we're going to have a lot of ice chips. And so Al showed this picture, and it is 1/4 inch scale or O scale. But the point is that the technique would work really well for just about any scale. He just took some beads off of a child's bracelet, or you could just get some beads out of, someplace like Sofo Fabrics or Michael's or any of those places. And he just crushed them up. Now, he crushed them up using a hammer, a rag. You stick a few beads in a hammer, stick a few beads in a rag, and then take a hammer to them. And I think if we did that for any scale, you could hammer it down enough to where you could get the chips. Might look a little bit powdery in end scale, but hey, there you go. So that was one thing here that I wanted to bring up, because nobody brought up the ice chips, and Al was kind enough to bring that up for us on the Wednesday show. This leads into a little segment that I wanted to apologize to everybody real quick. When I'm running these shows, I'm trying to run controls in the background. I'm thinking about scale and cross scales, materials and applications across scales, and skill sets of the folks out there that are watching, and how am I going to put this thing together into a cohesive series, as well as trying to string together a cohesive sentence. And I'm not a compulsive multitasker like a few other folks that we know of, but Martin can probably manage all of those tasks at once. I can't. And so I sometimes go down a rabbit hole, and I forgot to take you guys and let you know that when somebody had brought up ice, I remembered that I didn't finish the discussion on the smokestack, and I went down the smokestack pipe tube, and I'm sure all of you guys were sitting there going, what does brass tubing have to do with ice and clear ice? So thank you for scratching your heads, but somebody should have said, what rabbit hole have we gone down? I also did the same thing to William Zadnik. He brought up that the ammonium system, the refrigeration system, would have probably been closed loop. And for some reason, I went down the thing of thinking about the compressors and powering them with sawdust or with a liquid or a liquefied gas or gasoline or something else. So home heating type oil or something. I just, and I forgot to tell you guys that I was going down that rabbit hole, and took you with me there. So I apologize, and if I do that in the future, hopefully we can get that limited. But I think I'm probably past that at this point because William Zednick is coming from France to help make this a global product being brought to you. And with William's help there in France and his collaboration on this thing, hopefully we'll have a little bit smoother show. All right, well, with that, let's go on ahead and move forward here a little bit. I'm going to move my computer away from my desk and start talking a little bit about something else. So, and I'm going to come over here to my desktop. And now this is some Bristol board, like what I had talked about earlier. And this doesn't show up very well, but it is an eggshell. This is the Bristol board that we had discussed earlier. And what I'm going to do here is, if William doesn't know that I'm going to do this to him, but if I could have him give me some call outs, or if Richard's available on some of the dimensions, we'll go through and grab some of the dimensions. I'm just going to do my thing kind of loosey-goosey. And so I'm going to show you how I basically do it. Before we get going, though, I do want to step back and discuss one other thing real quick, and that is the work surface. I work on a glass plate, and this is a 1/4-inch glass plate. I have on one side, I have stuck in a 1/4-inch, just 1/4-inch wood, square wood, and I've got about 5 of these plates. I get about 5 to 8 years out of a plate of glass. But this one, I quite frankly cannot recall what I used to glue this down. I think it was 5-minute epoxy. It may have been some 3M tape that is used for a transfer tape for sealing. And then with epoxy on in addition to that tape, whatever it is, believe me, I can't get it off now without ripping the glass surfaces or breaking the glass. This thing, when I applied it so that it was square to the edges, so that when I put a T-square on it, it'll work. And then that way I can take various different types of triangles or whatever, work on it. Yes.
Can you bend your camera down a little bit, please?
Let's see here. How's this? Does that
Still
work?
Can't see your desk.
Okay. There we go. How's that?
No, still can't see your desk, Chris.
It's on 2 different screens. You should be able to see it if you on the top right-hand side of the Zoom, you should be able to place it where you can see there's a little icon with 9 little squares, or 3 little squares and a big one.
Yeah, if you click on that, you should be able to bring it up, hopefully. We'll go on ahead and make the desk the primary thing I thought it was.
Yeah, I had you actually side by side with you and your
Just
desk.
make the desk primary.
Okay, I'll take
We'll
you
call it
off then. Makes it easier for everybody.
That makes it easy for everybody.
There we go.
How's that? Okay, so hopefully people can see that. So, but I work off of a glass surface plate. Now, this has that piece here so that I can use it in various different ways. I can put down a template and work off of the template underneath. I can cover that template with the old idea of wax paper. I do not use that method anymore for multiple reasons. Number one, I find that some glues tend to stick the wax paper still a little bit. Number two, the wax paper smears glue. Number three, it pops up and isn't really smooth. Number four is my hands stick to it and tend to pull it up. And number 5, I cut into it or rip it a whole lot. And then I'm fit back down to my plan underneath of it. Plus, it's sometimes on the fine lines, it's hard to see. So I really don't use wax paper. You could use the acetate covering. I don't like the acetate that much. Again, for about the same set of reasons, but it tends on the way I work and push things down and stuff, I tend to somehow mess up that acetate, and it always bows in the center and things. And so it distorts my plant sets. The other thing you can do is you can go out and get the acetate and have your plan actually printed on the acetate and glue that down. That works a little bit better, but I still don't tend to use that method because I, quite frankly, have found a better method. And that better method is to grab yourself some Scotch 3M tape. And I'm not going to very often say spend extra money. This is one of those few exceptions. Spend the extra money and get yourself some high quality shipping tape. This shipping tape, for some reason, glues will not stick to it. Some of the cheaper shipping tape, the glues do tend to stick to it. But then if I take and put down 3 or 4 strips of the tape across my plan set, I've got the plan totally encased. If you have a plan set that you're working from that you were pulling a bunch of different things off of, like this is the plan set for one of the models that I've been showing, that I've been working on the diorama. I cover that plan set in tapes too, and that way I've got my plan sets are permanently protected. If I spill something on the desk with the plan set down. The other thing that you can do is take that tape and you can put it over graph paper on the back side. And on my plates of glass, I tend to have 2 different plan sets. This is a Sierra West Scale Models plan set that I've been working on another model. And then I've got this sitting here. The final thing about using this tape is if you do this, I really highly recommend getting 4 or 5 copies of your plan set and storing the original, and then use the copy, because when you go to pull this tape off, you're going to destroy whatever is underneath of it. But you can totally tape it down. You can put your plan set on top of graph paper, use graph paper. You probably can't see this, but this is actually a little thing on graph paper. I'm not getting it to show up. So, but trust me, it is on some graph paper. So that's just a few thoughts about using this. I don't know, some of the other guys out there that are more experienced, what type of methods do you guys use for the surface area and setting up your templates? Anybody else use some other alternatives short of just directly putting it onto the material that you're fabricating from? Come on, guys. I don't want to be the
Hi,
only
Chris.
one here.
Chris,
Yes.
I do use another method of making double copies of my print. Then
Uh-huh.
I use a cork base, and then I use long pins to stick it into the copy of the print I'm using to hold my pieces in place. And I
Okay.
just throw it away after.
Yeah. So you're doing it the old way, kind of like where you're using the T-pins and like what we used to do with the old models.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah, like these pins here.
Oh, okay. You're using those pins. I was thinking of some
Well, I know what you're talking about.
T-pins, yeah.
Yeah.
But just for the newer type of guys that are out there that don't know what a T-pin is. I don't know if I can get this to show or not. Let's see here. Where is it? Okay.
Yes, I've used those.
Hopefully you can see that. But this is a T-pin, and they make really good things to hold down your model sticks with and things, because you can catch the corners of your sticks or whatever, the materials that you're working with underneath the T-squares of the T head here, and it helps hold down the materials. So that's another option. And quite frankly, I had totally forgotten about that. So good catch there. Anything else, guys?
If
Yeah,
your
when I-
interior, if the interior of your building is not going to be seen, you could actually probably spray a copy of your plans with a cheap adhesive spray and built right on the plans.
Yeah,
Okay. That's one I hadn't heard of before, quite frankly. But yeah, that's an idea. Anything else?
I think that covers it, Chris.
Okay. All right. Well, have we got Rich on? Is Rich there? Okay. How about Will, do you have the availability of Rich's dimensional drawings?
Yes, I do. Which one do you need? Which view?
Oh. Right now, if you can give me the longest side of the office building, please.
Okay, let me see if I can find, it is 30 feet.
Okay, so all I'm gonna do, guys, is take my ruler here and I'm gonna mark it from this edge. So I'm just gonna take this thing and set it on here and give myself a vertical line going up. And then from there, I'm going to go out 30 feet. And I'm actually going to make this thing about a little bit longer. I'm going to go up to 34 foot and mark myself down a 34 foot. Okay. And so I just do my building kind of loosey-goosey, as I explained. And so this is the length of the thing. So I'm going to need 2 of these. So I know that I'm going to need times 2. All right. And so that's that. And then I'm going to go on ahead and get that one. And then the tallest, or excuse me, the width of the ends are what?
The ends are 21 feet.
21 feet. Okay. So I'm drawing this down to an HO scale. I've got just about 24 foot and 3/4 on my space here. So I'm going to call this one, actually, I do think I'm going to cut it down a little bit. So you said it was 21 foot?
Yes.
Okay. I'll go on ahead and make it about 22 foot. So, and so I'm going to need 2 of these suckers. So times 2 going this way. And then I'm going to need the tall walls on the building, the tall building.
Yeah,
So
the tall wall is
tallest wall
16
on the,
feet.
I'm sorry?
16 for the tall side.
Okay, is that the short wall or the long wall?
Not the tall building, building number 1, the smaller, long building. It's got 2 sides that are different heights. One is 16 feet, one is 12.
Okay, so let's see here. So that's one is 16. So if I go up 15 feet, I'm going to be good to go on this one. So I'm going to go, since I'm kind of doing it a little bit dimensionally here. Let's see here. Flip this sucker around. And so if I go up 15 feet on my ruler, because it gives me a spare foot here on the bottom, that gives me about 16. So I'm going to go up and mark that real quick there. And so that gives me one cut. And then this is a end. And then the other one was what again there?
12.
12. So I'm going to go about 13 just for grins. So 12 and 13. So and so this is an end. Okay, and this is the second one. So that's my two end walls. What's wrong with this picture here? One was how tall again?
The two side walls are 30
One is
feet.
one is 21 and one is okay. Yeah, one is okay. I got it. Okay. I twisted it around my head.
Yeah, the end
Okay,
walls are not, the end walls are not rectangular.
Yeah.
Don't forget, you've got that pitch.
Yeah. And so I need two of these things and I'll cut those here once I get the other things cut. And then that leaves me with the tall building. And how wide is that tall building?
The tall building, you want the widest dimension?
Yes, please.
It's 24 feet wide
Okay. So I'm
by
going to go with,
11 feet deep.
okay. So I'm going to go with 24 foot wide. So I need two of those. So 24 foot, I'm going to make this 24 and a half or so just for grins. So I need two of these. So 24 wide times 2. So, and how tall are they?
The full height is
Yeah.
31 feet at the peak.
31 feet at the peak.
At the
Okay.
peak of the roof, it's 31 feet.
Okay, so I'm going to go with 32 feet. On my rooftop. So HO 32. Okay, so that's the height there on that, and that'll kind of get me going here. All right, so that gives me my kind of my basic thing here. So I'm going to grab a different X-Acto knife. Now, a lot of people use the good old number 11 at this point. I'm going to put that sucker aside just for grins. And I'm going to find myself my number 16 again. I know I put it away up here someplace. I'm going to grab the number 16 blade. And I'm going to change over to a metal. I use a metal triangle as a cutting guide. And so I'm just going to come through here and start cutting. And while I'm doing this, can a couple of you other guys maybe describe what you guys kind of do here? I'm sure that there's some other processes or techniques that some folks use. Come on, guys. You don't want to sit here and just watch me cut.
Well, basically,
glue
it's Larry
dry.
McDowell here. I'm building in quarter scale. And I just did up this sketch, just what you're doing, in quarter scale and I enlarged the sidewall. I started with the big wall, the wall with the door and the loading platform that's facing in the little dimensional draw or the isometric drawing. So I drew it up because what I was really having a little trouble with was placing an order for clapboard or board to make clapboard. And so I had to figure out how much the quantity I needed. And I just placed my order last night with Mount Albert. So pretty much what you're doing.
Okay.
I will draw up, to quarter scale, my drawings, and I'll use them as a jig. I will put them down. And if I do, I may just have a solid wall in behind of some sort, or maybe a thin ply, marine ply, and just get a clapboard on that. That's the easy way out rather than framing, because I already got 2 other projects on the go where I'm framing all the inside walls for my plans. And anyway, that's where I'm going.
Okay. Anybody else? There's gotta be somebody else that's out there kind of doing this thing. I kind of did a miscut here, and so I'm not gonna sweat it a whole lot. And what I'm doing is I've just got an emery board, and I'm just using that emery board to kind of get rid of some of my peach fuzz and stuff here on this bad cut. All right, and so that gives me a couple of walls here, so I'm just going to continue forward with it. There's got to be some other things here, guys. We got to liven up the show. So I'm thinking that what I might do here in some of the future shows as we move forward, because quite frankly, I was expecting you guys to be a lot more vocal, is I might have to do some of this stuff offline and kind of so that everybody's not totally bored to death, because you're not coming here to watch me cut and to watch glue dry. As always, whenever you're making cuts, the reason I use this number 16 handle is when I come down here to the bottom end, with a number 11 blade, it's kind of hard to bring it up to really get it a clean cut all the way through. But with this one, I just kind of rotate it up because it's got that smaller blade. It's easier to get the heel and the point of the blade down here. So I can totally cut all the way right up against the backstop there, if you will. And I'm going to rotate this puppy around. And but there's got to be some other techniques. Are any of you guys, I know that Heath, I don't know if he's on or not. He's our baker, and I believe he's in England. But Heath, I know, is working in Styrene, and he's way ahead of us. But Heath, if you're on, can you kind of tell us what you did at this point?
Yeah. Not sure what I got here. Sorry. Can you hear me?
I
okay,
don't know
Chris?
if you can. I don't know if you have the ability to share your screen and like one of those pictures, the one with the rafters, the third one with the rafters kind of set up off of the side that you sent me last night. But if you can describe how you set this up and how you did your cutting and what tools you utilize to cut with.
So if you guys can see it, okay.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, so go back to so that's the mock-up I did on SketchUp. and I shrunk it down a little bit. I shrunk the water tank and started with styrene clapboard, 100 thou, to represent O scale. I cut my sidewalls. Now, there are a couple of things to remember too when you're coming in the same way that Chris is doing it, is how you want to do your roof. Now, I opted to build a more conventional roof with just rafter stringers, and I cut my bird's mouth. One thing to remember is this dimension here is going to affect the height of your wall, because you have to reduce the height of your wall by the height of your bird's mouth. In this case, it's 4 inches. Another thing to think about is if you're going to just put the sheet down and just have your tail ends showing, that's fine. And duty calls again, so I apologize. I'm at the bakery and the customer just walked in. So
Okay, go on ahead, Heath, and if you can, when you get a chance, come back and join us.
I will. Thank you.
Okay, if Will can throw it back on here. I mentioned earlier that I had, I'm waiting for Will to spotlight. I mentioned earlier that I needed 2 walls out of this one. So I know that this is 5 and dime to a lot of you, but I'm also trying to set up this series on YouTube if we have somebody with zero knowledge of doing this, and this is like, you know, they're just picking up an X-Acto for the first time. The way that I'm making sure that my 2 walls that I wanted were exactly the same height is I'm taking these 2 things and I'm just putting it together. I cut out that one, and then I'm just taking it here. I marked my cut line there so that I've got my cut line, and then I'm going to go on ahead and make my cut. But my point is that I used my wall template, and because I'm just making a one-off, I just used it as the cutting template versus going into making a cutting fixture or a cutting jig. If I had 4 or 5 walls or something that I needed the same size, I would probably do a cutting jig and make a real simple jig. But here I'm just kind of doing this. And how about you guys out there that are more advanced? When you have to make multiple items of the same size, at kind of what volume, what number do you use as the cutoff number between making a jig and just doing a kind of what I'm calling freehand, or where you're using the original part as the jig? By the way, if you do that and use the original part as your cutting template, always make sure to use the same original part piece. If you're making, say, 3 or 4 parts from an original, because you don't want to make a jig, don't, you know, make a cut and use that piece, and then take that second piece that you cut and use that to line up your first one. Always use the same piece each and every time. But where do you guys kind of call the cutoff point for the number of parts that you want to make before you start using a jig of some sort?
I may only leave something like 4 or 5, because just what you said, if you keep doing it that way, in most cases, you're making the next piece, the copy, a little larger and a little larger. And then if you, you should stick with the first piece as a measurement, not use the second copy and the third copy, or you're really going to make it larger each time you do it.
Okay. So you're saying, what I heard you say though, is that you tend to use like 4 or 5 as the magic number.
And it depends on what actually the piece is and how intricate it is. If it has to fit with other pieces, it may be a problem later on, but if it's just a couple of walls and it's small and manageable, it's not really a problem.
Okay.
I'm-
One thing that just occurred to me too, while I'm sitting here cutting this piece, is the cutting surface down below it. I'm on a cutting mat. But you know, if you use a piece of wood or something, and you try to use that as your background for cutting on, you're going to end up probably having the blade tend to pull away. So these cutting mats are really good. You can use a glass surface, but if you use a glass surface, you are going to go through a lot of knife blades. So just be aware of that. These cutting mats are worth the investment for those of you that plan on building more than one or two models. The other thing that I have used in a pinch has been cardboard as a backer, but the problem with the cardboard or with newspaper is that after each cut, you have to move the substrate because otherwise you end up catching your knife in the former cut. How about some other folks up there? What are your thoughts about the number of parts to cut before you start making a fixture or a jig?
Chris, I found that if you're doing multiple walls that are kind of co-joined together, I put a slight cut in it and then I bend it to crease it around the corner rather than make separate walls.
Good. And that's absolutely outstanding. And I thought of doing that for this model, quite frankly, but that brings up why I did not do it. And the reason I chose not to do it that way is that Paul Egri was kind enough to provide us with the templates for a textured model and stuff here. And so if you would want to use that method of kind of cutting things out and then folding it around. And Paul, I don't know if you're on or not. I haven't seen my list, but if you are here, can you kind of go through on your templates and cutting out those templates and how you use those tabs that you have in there? I don't know if Paul is on.
He was on earlier, but I don't see him at the moment.
Okay. Well, rat poison. Okay. Well,
Well, from my point of view, Chris, just to answer the question you were asking, for me, it depends on what I'm working from. If I'm working from a paper sketch, which is that's the point I'm at right now, is just a paper sketch. But the paper sketch will probably end up being some form of a digital CAD style drawing. I don't know what I'm going to use yet. From that point on, it'll probably end up getting cut on a entry-level diode laser cutter, just because the precision is way better than I can do. And if I'm coming from a digital format, it's easy to convert it and get it cut on the laser cutter.
okay.
Like, it's not an expensive laser cutter. Don't get me wrong, guys. I don't have like a ton of money in it. It's a really entry-level thing, but it up to a couple mil thick in basswood or in cardstock, it cuts like butter. It's slow, but I've got time.
But you have to have a software package to be able to load the instructions in, correct?
Yeah. There's a bunch of free. What you need is a vector drawing. Basically lines. A line from this point to that point is a vector, as opposed to a bitmap type of a drawing. If you've got a vector drawing, then a lot of times you can convert that and send it off, or at least modify it easy enough.
Has anybody ever used a Cricut machine?
What machine?
The Cricut, it does cutting. It'll cut that mat board. it's a little machine they use it has a cutter in it, and you feed it with the information, and it'll cut out your
It's
pattern.
it's called a cricket machine.
Oh, cricket. All right.
Okay, I've
And
never
I-
heard of that, so.
Yeah,
My
I
daughter's
own
got two of
one.
them.
The scrapbookers use it. People who like
Think
to
of it as
to do
a
scrapbook.
plotter, as a pen plotter, but instead of having a pen, you've got an X-Acto blade on the bottom.
Mhm.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. The
My-
other thing that I sometimes will use, I'm not showing it because it's over on the drafting table, kind of behind me right now. But I've got one of those old style paper cutters that have the big arm with half a machete on it. And you can get fairly straight shot cuts out of it, but you have to remember they're not going to be real accurate. As accurate as what most of the time we need, unless you're going to go back and disguise the joints. And if you're planning on disguising the joints and stuff, then good modeling involves hiding a whole bunch of stuff. So that's another option there. So I'm kind of getting some of my things kind of organized here. And
Come back.
let's see here, what time is it? It's 11:48. So all right. Keeping tabs of my time, I'm sorry. Go on ahead there, Heath.
Okay, so when it comes to cutting, one of the tricks I learned and was given a tip to was if you're cutting styrene wood, it doesn't matter. Do not apply a lot of pressure. Take your ruler, allow the ruler or your cutting edge to help you guide you. So you're going to put a little bit of pressure twisting into the ruler to maintain a straight cut, but light, frequent cuts. The harder you push, the more that you're going to deviate from your line. And when you're freehanding is very simple. You just hold with your index finger and your thumb, and then a light scribing using your ring finger and your baby finger to support your hand. I find that I don't even need to do the X for Windows anymore. Once I learned that trick, it takes several passes, but you won't make mistakes and you won't be having to add 6-inch trim versus 4-inch.
Yeah, I totally concur with what Heath is saying there. If you noticed, all of my cuts were at least 2 to 3. I get probably 3 minimum. I may have done 1 or 2 on just 2 cuts, but because I had a brand new blade in here and it was really cutting right through it. But after I had cut this Bristol board, and I don't know if you can give me the focus there, Will, for a moment, and then we'll come back to Heath. Okay, but what I've done after cutting everything, because I'm kind of doing this old school freehand wise, so that people can just use the bare basic of tools. I grabbed my emery board again, and I've gone over all the cut edges to kind of get rid of the burr on both sides, as well as straighten up the edges a little bit. Now, these are not real super clean cuts. I'll be upfront with you because I've done them very quickly on the fly here, but this will kind of get us started for this type of thing. And then when I get done, I can put these pieces together and they should be virtually mirror images of one another, which the first 2 walls, which we'll have are. So this is my base walls. And so at this point, I'm going to go on ahead and label these. And Will, if you want to throw it back over at Heath, I'm just going to write my labels and continue on here. And I'll let Heath kind of show us what else he's doing. with his styrene. Keith is building his O-scale structure out of styrene. And with that, I'm going to shut up.
So let me double check that I can hear me. There's a mock-up I did. I shrunk the original drawing by about 10 feet. Now I'm second guessing myself on the actual tall building, and I'm actually going to stretch it back out another 3 or 4 feet. This is a quick view of the mock-up I did. It is cut from a for sale sign, which I've actually played around with. You can actually use this as a template or a base for roofs, walls, etc. It cuts very easily. As you see, it's very open, so you do have to take that into consideration. I've even used Plastruct styrene liquid glue and actually been able to attach styrene to this with some success. I think I have a few more pictures. There's a side view of a boxcar, just trying to figure out sizes and how it looks. You can see how I just glued the paper on after cutting it out, and did a very, very quick mock-up to give me. I like mock-ups. I'm a bit of a visual person that way. Can you see that page? The second. Oh, sorry. Hang on.
No.
There. Sorry. Here is again a couple of pictures. Oh, going the wrong way. That's the ice machine. Actually, I'm going to carry on. This is a little bit further ahead. I plan on 3D printing, well, designing first, this Harrison ice machine, and I hope to make the files available for everybody. That if they want to throw in their house as a bit of a fun thing. But let me go back here to the pictures.
That would be fun.
I have it partially done. There's a lot of work to do. Can you see the 3D sketch of that up on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing a picture of the model.
Okay. Let me get rid of that then. And bring this up. So that's the 3D sketch of the model that I've been working on off of this drawing. As you can see, I can make a drawing and use it as a guide to help me create an accurate facsimile of the actual item. I did that for Richard's drawings and created the SketchUp drawing that off of his. And that's allowed me to make adjustments to, can you see the Gamble Ice House in the SketchUp drawing now? Or still the ice machine?
We do have your thing, those drawings loaded on the New Tracks website on the workshop show page. So they are available for downloading. There's a link there, and Will, I think, has 4 of your drawings there.
Okay.
And it's a little confusing, if I might add, on Richard's drawings. It shows, I think, 3, or 4 of his drawings, but the link says 6. And if you click on the link, you get all 6 of his drawings, his working drawings.
Now, I have a couple of pictures of the styrene small building that I have so far, if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, before we do that, Will, can you give me the focus again one more time on my desk? What I have are the two walls, and I've labeled them north and south so that I just mentally know. But one wall, I believe, is higher than the other wall. Is that not correct?
It is. It's higher by at least a foot.
Okay, so
I think
and
what
I'm going to
you've
go on
got-
ahead and take my north wall, which is going to be the lower wall. So I'm going to make that one about a 16 inches. So I'm just going to make my note cut here, and then I'll let Heath go on ahead and take it over while I cut down my wall.
There's actually a 4-foot difference.
Oh,
Is
is
it a
there?
4 foot? 'Cause quite frankly, I have forgotten.
Yes, one side is 12 feet, the other one is 16 feet.
Okay, so I've got
These are the two sides that have the docks on them.
yes, okay. So one is 12 and one is 16, okay?
Correct.
All right, so I'll go on ahead and make those notes here, and I'll be making these cuts. Okay, go on ahead, Heath.
So I think mine's slightly different. I did lower my walls a little bit for perspective. Here, if you can see the clapboard siding, which I cut first, and then I cut the doors and windows, and then added, partly because what I had on hand and partly because it's easier, 80 by 80 styrene represent 4x4 posts on the interior, with the idea of a pseudo barn build, kind of. It's not going to be seen very much. It's going to be spray painted a neutral color, probably a light brown, to represent new wood. And you can just see through the back window there. The as I mentioned before, I did a basic roof rafter. I actually laid it up against my end wall and measured the ridge board and a 6-inch tail out piece. I don't know what the correct name is that for. And then cut one, put it in place, use that as a template, and literally just pencil on styrene and cut the rest of them. Put them all together, clamped them, double checked my bird's mouth, which you can see up against the top of the wall there. And they're all pretty close. I'm not too worried about the exact, but when I ran your eye down that line, it's pretty straight. The end here is one without a bird's mouth, and then just 1 foot spacer blocks glued into place to kick it out. And you can see the closed side in. There's a fascia board, and you can see how now I plan on shingling. I have some O-scale shingles, but I don't think I have enough to do the entire building. So I might have to rethink that aspect of it. Third picture is just showing the interior. And again, it was fast and furious. I just kind of added the 4x4 posts after the fact. This area, if you can see my cursor, is going to be an office, and it's going to be quite small. So I decided not to put the second window, and you can kind of see where the window was going to be. When I cut my clapboard, I cut it on the back side, so I have to mirror all of my measurements to make sure that I are getting the right positions. I think that's it for that. Yeah, we're back to those. So, I has anybody worked with styrene quite a bit at all, or is it kind of one of those a lot of woodworkers out there, cardstock guys?
I actually myself, in a lot of ways, I prefer wood, or excuse me, prefer styrene over wood. And I will be doing a solid styrene build, like what you're doing here, probably about the third structure. The problem with styrene for myself, and when I'm using it, is if I'm trying to make it look like wood, it's actually the painting and finishing process takes more work than it does to take a wood and make wood look like wood through stains and things of that nature. So, but as far as fabrication processes go, I much prefer styrene over wood. So I work at about 50-50 on styrene and wood.
You know, Chris, the reason that I've never even tried styrene is when I was playing around with it, I couldn't find a glue that would work. And so for me, I know what'll work on wood. I know how to solder brass, but I could not figure out how to get the styrene and a proper glue to work for me. So if you could give some indication about what glues you use and why those glues and how to use them, I think that would be extremely beneficial, because I think that's one of the real hangups that I know I have and probably others have too.
Okay. Well, the big trick with styrene, quite frankly, when you're fabricating with it, is you're using a styrene glue that actually goes in and welds the styrene together to form a full unit, much like soldering. Think of it just like soldering. But that means that the two surfaces have to be very cleanly cut and made very cleanly, so that you have a good tight joint. And then number two, a lot of people tend to use too much bonding agent for their styrene. It pretty much works through a capillary action, but if you flood the area, because it really uses, it has to have a little bit of a surface there to kind of melt and stuff. If you flood it too much, you don't get a good clean bond, and things just don't dry right. And when it does dry, you can get pitting or something like that, particularly if it's thinner. So just like a lot of glues, the PVA glues and stuff, people tend to use too much of it. And you just have to have a really clean joint, because almost all styrene glues are, super thin. So like water.
Maybe you could have the gentleman that's using the styrene in no scale, maybe he can show what you're talking about, because again, I have no idea what glues would even work, nor how much you're really talking about to use the right amount.
Okay. Well,
Jim?
when we get down to the fabrication process a little bit, we'll come back and visit this a little bit further, because I think it is an excellent topic, and it's something that we're going to kind of discuss a little bit, because we need to discuss applications of glue like PVA. Do you use a dab, leave it in the little dots, or do you smear it out, or what are a couple of tricks to doing that with a PVA glue, which is like your Elmers or your Aleenes? When would be a good time to use the Elmers versus using the Aleenes, or Ileens, however you want to pronounce that, the tacky glue? I can't say anything about brass, but I can, an ACC cement. But using ACC is another one of those where people tend to use too much ACC, And again, the ACC cements, they have to have air, oxygen to actually form their bond. It's a chemical bond reaction there. And so for that to work, you again cannot flood the surfaces. So we'll go through discussing a couple of different types of applicators to help you limit the volume of ACC that you are applying when we get to the fabrication process.
You're using a solvent. You're dissolving the plastic, right?
Right. It's literally melting the plastic, and depending on what you use, you can use something that's not super aggressive like MEK, methyl ethyl ketone, or you can use something, one of the more common ones, and the ones that most of the military guys are using is a cement by either Tamiya or by Mr. Surface, I think it is. And those have a couple of little minor quirks to their properties, which we can discuss. But basically, again, it's you put the two pieces together using capillary action, fill that joint or the seam, if you will, and then it literally melts the two pieces together. The other type of glue that I typically use, I'll just grab a can here and show you real quick.
I was going to mention that if you're trying to do some lamination, such as brick, texture to plain styrene, I also use Fowler's Expert glue, which is a little thicker than the thin styrene cement that you're talking about from Tamiya. Also, the old tube glue for plastic models. If you're laminating two pieces of plastic, it gives you a little more working time to make sure that the two pieces are aligned.
Right. And Martin Bechtel has mentioned in the past, I'm pretty sure it was Martin, of using the Walters glue and the ACC together when doing some laminations, and you apparently get a really good bond that way. The problem for me with the ACCs is that it's a bond, but it's kind of a brittle bond. On my styrene glue that I use, I keep it in a container here. You can kind of see my container. I'm zoomed in a little bit. But if I open it, the reason I keep it in that is that the stuff evaporates so quickly that even if I have it in a dispensing bottle, like one of these, it's, this is actually for an ACC, but if I have it in a dispensing bottle like this, this stuff will evaporate. This stuff here, let me figure out which way to show it, is a weld-on. And this is really, really super strong stuff. It's really obnoxious smelling. I'll be the first one to admit to that. But this works on the acrylics as well as the ABS that is kind of used in some places. And it also works on the styrene. You just have to be really careful with it. But again, it really evaporates, and it evaporates so fast that I keep it literally when it comes, I keep it in the plastic. But this stuff, I got turned on to it from the gentleman that has a show, and he was the head model maker for all of the Star Wars. And he's got a whole series of doing certain things out in the model fabrication genre on YouTube that you can watch. But that's one of the glues, and we'll talk about that one and some of the pros and cons to that. But Jim, that one will stick styrene together like nobody's business. The problem of it is you only got about 3 seconds to get your pieces together, so you better have them aligned before you apply it.
Thank you.
So for those of you that might be interested in doing that, I'll throw a link up and you can get it when you buy that stuff. It comes with an applicator also. So, okay. And let's see here. I'm going to take a quick peek here. We're at about 12 minutes after, so we got about another 15 minutes. So what I've done here is I've gone through and I've cut my 2 walls, and I've got the 2 side walls here. So next is the peak wall. So I need to measure how tall it is here. And Will, can you give me that height again? One more time. I think you said the peak was 31.
On which building? The
I'm
shorter
on
building?
the short office building right now.
The short office building, at the peak. Give me 2 seconds. I gotta look at a different drawing.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
22
catch me.
feet.
How tall?
22 at the peak.
Okay, I'm gonna go with 23 on mine then. Well, actually, no, I cut this thing to 22, so all I need to do is find the peak here, and that's not the one I want to use. And
William, let me ask you a question. Is there a way that the people viewing the show can go to the website and simply download one of the photos of the model with all the dimensions on it so that they can have it themselves?
Absolutely. If anyone wants the drawings, they're all on the website. You go to New Tracks, and you'll see on the top there's a new menu item on the top bar called New Tracks Workshop. Just put your mouse on that, and you'll see a new menu that pops up. And the bottom it says Projects. You move your mouse down to there, slide it over to Ice House. And then you'll be able to, there's the blue download links on the following page, and you can download all of the drawings that Rich did for us. There's a zip folder that you can download. There's also a zip folder for all of the drawings that Paul Egri provided if you want to do it as a cardstock. And there's also a link if you want to download the Sketchup file that Heath was showing us earlier. So they're all there on the site.
And the website that you go to is newtracksmodeling.com.
correct. As if Jim doesn't know that.
Well, I know.
But you're absolutely for the
But Williams-
people
Williams-
joining us here. That's where it's all at.
But William
And,
said,
we'll be putting some other things up as we move forward here. If Jim, did you want to say anything else real quick?
no, I just, I think that it'll be beneficial to people if they can download the drawing with the dimensions on it.
Yeah.
So that they have it, where they can use it themselves. That to me would be extremely beneficial.
Right. Will, if you can give me back the screen on my desktop. Okay, what you can see here is I've got my 2 walls, and they are 2 different heights. And so I've got my end wall piece here, and I've gone through and marked the center of it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one of my walls and use it as a template. And then I'm going to use the other wall as a template and mark. And so now I've got those two, where are we at here? Come here.
There you are.
I've got the two
Right there.
right there. Yeah, I've got the two different wall heights. And so I'll cut my angles from the edge going up to the center. So I'll use the angle going up to the center here to
Chris?
get my angles.
Chris?
So this one being the top, of course. So this one will be the top. So I'll go on ahead and utilize.
Just to
that.
let you know, Chris, that the peak is not centered on the drawings.
Yeah, I've got to go through and make that adjustment. You're absolutely right, and I forgot about that. So I've got to go through, and I think the one wall was 3 foot, the short wall, if I recall.
Chris, on the tall wall, center of peak is 4'6" off the tall wall.
Okay, 4'6". All right, so good catch, guys. Because quite frankly, it's one of those things where I'm trying to think of too many things at once.
Come in on
So-
your left there.
Yeah, so 4'6". So okay,
Off the tall wall. That's the short wall.
yeah. So
The other side.
the tall wall.
Yes. From the outside edge to inside,
Okay, from the outside to the inside, it's 4'6".
4'6",
Okay,
to a peak of 31 feet. Or sorry, on the small building, 22 feet.
yeah, it should be 22.
Sorry, and the outside wall to peak dimension is 5'9". I apologize. I was looking at the tall building.
Is what was it again? Something
5'9".
5'9" above the 22.
Yeah, your peak is 22 feet,
Mhm.
and then coming in from the left tall wall to
Yeah.
is 5'9".
Okay,
Sorry, I was looking at the tall peak.
so 5'9". So if I make it I'll have to kind of go back and look at my thing here, because quite frankly, I cut my pieces slightly oversized in my loosey-goosey at the beginning, as I typically do. And with this offset, I forgot all about that, and I'm going to have to make some adjustments. So I'll take a few minutes and figure that out real quick during the course of the week, and then I'll come back and describe it so that everybody isn't sitting here watching me just trying to
Question. How long
twist paper around.
how long did you cut your back wall or your front face? How tall?
The back wall I have not cut yet, because I wanted to discuss that with you guys. That leads into kind of next week, where we've got to talk a little bit about if we're going to do a ramp out on the back side in those sidewalls, and if we're going to do any other doors or opening in that tall wall, because I could see where we might want to have two, maybe three potential openings in that for conveyors or something else. And we needed to briefly discuss that before making those cuts. And then once I've got all of my walls kind of laid out as far as great big pieces here go, then I'll come in and I'll figure out my windows. Quite frankly, I am going to just utilize some windows from Grant Line probably. I haven't decided on which ones. I was going to go through kind of that process. And then because the man door in the front is kind of hidden, I'm going to use one of my cheaper older castings. This, I believe, is an old Campbell door casting. It's not quite as nice and pretty as some of them. But instead of scratch building the doors and everything for the first scratch building project, I'm going to just use some grant line pieces, and then we'll discuss briefly on using some of the more modern type thing where we have some of the layered like papers or you know, excuse me, laser cut type things. And then we'll also take a look at using the dividers or dial calipers or a compass to help in transferring the items, the dimensions from the castings to the walls. Excuse me. Okay. And with that, I think we're going to come down to the end of this show.
Chris, I got
Does
a
anybody
question.
have something to add? Yes.
Where did you get that metal triangle drawing machine using with your X-Acto blade? Where do I start
This-
shopping for that?
This is just a Fairgate triangle from it's just found in art supply stores or in drafting areas. I'll put up a link. They're only, I think this is like $3 or so. This one's a Fairgate, but Alvin, a lot of drafting materials. So give me until tomorrow, and I'll have a link up tomorrow on the website for this, and then I'll also where you can get it from. I'm sure it's available on Amazon. It's nothing more than a what is that, a 45-90 triangle, and this one's a 6-inch. So you can buy them in like anything from 3 to, I don't know, on up. You can get them a couple of feet long for that matter, but this one's like a 6-inch. And I think in my measuring drawer, I think I've got another one that's just like a 3-inch or something, but I use this one a lot. I tend to use metal over plastic because if you use the plastic ones, quite frankly, I don't use the colored plastic. I tend to really use all the time the clear plastic, but I knew that for the demonstration purposes that the clear plastic would not work as well, so I chose to use the kind of colored plastic type of ruler here. Or, excuse me, triangle. But these are all just drafting tools, and you can find them at art stores and even at the Walmarts and things like that too, in the kids supply, school supply stuff.
Hey, the brand name was Alvin.
This one is a Fairgate. The other reason I like this one is it's hard to see, but it has a bunch of holes in it, and they're all labeled as far as how big around the holes are, the dimensions. So it goes from a 1/32 up to a 31/32 holes in this thing. So that's also useful when you're doing some layout work, or I have even used it to cut out styrene circles and things in fabrication.
Thank you.
Chris, there was I may have missed a little bit. Was there kind of a some discussion on the functionality of the building and layout of the interior kind of idea?
Yeah, we kind of went through that in the first and the second sessions. And we discussed a few ideas on the functionality. I've left it very, very generalized because people are going to be modeling in different eras and are going to be using different layouts of this structure. So we talked about a couple of ideas about putting it into the scenery base just to kind of get people talking. And like I mentioned earlier, we still need to determine the exact functionality of it on the backside for icing reefers, if we're going to have an icing dock coming out of it or not, or if we're going to do it via some other method. And so I myself, for what I'm going to be modeling here, is going to be basically a clapboard structure that is worse for wear. It's something that you would find in the rundown depression, into the depression, and kind of in a industrial type of a setting on a spur. And it's just going to be kind of a mom and pop type shop. So it's not going to be super fancy, but I'm going to focus a little bit on the eye candy on the roof because the roofs are something that your viewers will typically see. So hopefully that answers that question. But in the first two sessions, we did discuss in general terms the functionality of the building and how you could set it up for basically anything in the past 100 years.
Okay, because I don't know if you can see my screen. I've got my SketchUp drawing up, and the ice house front small building will be manufacturing ice. And if anybody's interested in this 3D design, either I can probably print and mail. I'm up in Canada, so it might take a little while. In HO or O, I can do so, or just forward you the files and print on your own. But my thought was the front building was going to be manufactured and the storage would be in the tall building with a crane to help carry the blocks out to a reefer and a backloading dock. So that was my thought. But if anybody's interested, please contact Chris or in the actual 3D ice baking machine.
I would be interested, Larry McDonald in Toronto. And that was my question, but then you brought this drawing up where you're going to place that. And that's what I was thinking, where to the side where you have the higher walls. And because that's very nice machine. I haven't found anything like that yet. I'm finding more newer machineries and it just doesn't fit the building.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have no problem trying to finish it up as quickly as possible for people. And like I said, it kind of makes it a little bit, Chris likes eye candy on the outside. I like looking in people's windows. Yeah, that's kind of my idea.
You don't want to get a knock at the door tonight from the department.
What's really nice about this and what Heath is doing, Heath is taking it to the next level. And so if we've got a couple of folks that are a little bit more skilled, because quite frankly, I am gearing all of my discussions to number one, old school, and number two, to the very beginning modeler, the very first time he's modeled. And I'm trying to keep the cost down to an absolute bare minimum, because this may be a hobby that the person is just not sure he wants to get into. So I want to give him access to tools and things that he has laying around his house that he can utilize on the cheap. And I'm trying to keep the investment cost way down. That's the reason for things like using the emery board for sandpaper and stuff like that, instead of going out and buying sanding sponges and sanding twigs and all of the other stuff. But yeah, I think Keith's drawing there is excellent. And I'm hoping that a few of the more advanced guys will pick up and maybe utilize his ideas and things. his ideas on the backside and stuff are quite frankly what I originally envisioned. But after a few discussions, I'm thinking that I may have to have a loading dock simply because the loading dock would provide an outstanding entryway into using jigs and fixtures for fabricating parts.
And I'm also just showing some of the tools that are really easy. Sketchup is what I've been using forever. It's a free to upload. Sketchup 2017 is what I use. You can manipulate your drawings and see how things are going to fit before you actually build them. So it is an excellent tool to try to, even for the beginning models, because you can kind of see what you're getting into. But the techniques that are in styrene are exactly the same as Crystal say as working in wood. It's just handling the glues a little bit differently, I believe. And everything's pretty easy, isn't it?
Well, I would say so. How about some other folks here? We've still got like 28 people in on the Zoom call here. I have no idea how many are on, on the YouTube call.
On the well, I can fill you in on that. There's right now there's 5 people on YouTube, and we actually have a little comment on YouTube from Daryl at Interaction Hobbies. He mentioned that he had gotten some styrene from China and was finding that he was having issues gluing it together. And what he found, it actually had an oily coating on it that was interfering with the bonding. So as soon as you clean that up, and after that, he didn't have any issues. Just something I guess we should be aware of if we find that it's a little, he cleaned it up with a bit of alcohol.
Yeah, you can use alcohol, or even something, if you are careful with it, is Bestine, which is rubber cement. It's the solvent used in rubber cement. It will also glue styrene together if you use too much of it and let it sit for a while. But it will actually clean better than the alcohol, because on your cuts, where you make your cuts, it will actually dissolve that small burr that you get a little bit. So if you just take the back of your knife blade, the heel or something, or use a deburring X-Acto blade and run it off, you'll still have a slight edge in a lot of cases. And that very, very minute edge, even though it's not really visible, may interfere with your solvent transfer. And so a lot of times I will go through and use the Bestine to get rid of that little burr, but I also use it to get rid of my finger oils and things because paints don't like to stick to that styrene surface. It gives it a little bit of a tooth and helps the paint stick. And that's the bottom line on that one.
I've also found it a good idea to sand the styrene, not with coarse sandpaper, but with fine sandpaper. I found that even with evergreen, a little sanding helps that bonding.
Yes, you are correct. I sometimes find that it's with the sanding, it's kind of it can leave a texture if I get very aggressive at all on it. And so you have to keep it real super light. But the Bestine will, if you're trying to simulate metal in particular, with the styrene, like on a metal boxcar, the siding or something, that Bestine will leave the surface really smooth and allow you to get or reproduce a metal effect much cleaner. So it's just a little trick of the trade. It's very subtle, but it does make a difference. And again, we'll cover that when we get into the more advanced skills with working with styrene.
Chris,
Well, go on ahead.
one question. Someone who's in the plastic sign business, I found I got some glue from them once, and that stuff will stick to just about anything. I know it really works fast. I don't know if it's any good for this, but just a suggestion.
Okay, without knowing the brand, I don't know. A lot of those glues, you kind of have to be a little bit careful with, because with thinner styrene, they will eat it up. Particularly if you get too much applied. The other disadvantage, like that weld on, is the stuff really stinks, and it's really obnoxious. And then number two is it evaporates. I mean, even through one of those long little like filament hoses that isn't a whole lot bigger than the size of a human hair, I can go through a 3-ounce bottle, and if I let it sit out on my desktop for a week, it's evaporated out. So I've taken to using Vaseline jelly, and I stab that into that tube, into the Vaseline jelly, to help limit the evaporation process of that stuff. But
Good idea.
it's the ABS and stuff. If you're using the Plastistruck and things, that's really a good glue to have, that sign glue. And I'm sorry, I don't know the name off the top of my head, but there is a styrene glue that, yeah, the Plastistruck is one of them. Yeah, but if you open that up, I'm sure you can tell everybody that that's pretty obnoxious. Not something you want to hiff and whiff. But there is a foam glue that can also work as a styrene glue. And something else that people don't think about a whole lot and will kind of touch on in some scenery aspects is using caulk, particularly the clear silicone caulk, as a bonding agent for the styrene, and gluing two pieces together with that. There's a little trick to that one that we'll talk about. But anyway, does anybody else have any comments they'd like to share real quick here?
You're doing a good job. Don't give it up.
Well, thank you. I today want to take a moment and thank Heath for his input. And I know Heath's at work and stuff, and he's way ahead of us on this, but with his ability to come back and talk a little bit, it fills in some of the holes. I'm also asking you guys to please step up to the plate, a couple of the more advanced modelers, and do your thing on this and contribute to it. And if you've got anything going on your desk, always feel free to bring that up too, if it's appropriate to the conversation. Well, guys, I'm going to go on ahead and in the live YouTube call here, we will have a short after show for a few minutes and get some feedback from you guys. So again, everybody, thank you very much for attending. I look forward to seeing everybody next Saturday, and make sure to continue to build those models, because life is too short to build all the models I want to. We'll see everybody. And I've got to find my